In this figure, we're going to talk about the structure of water and its essential polar nature. And we need to talk about the bonding between elements within molecules. That can occur in a variety of fashions. In one, known as ionic bonding, the electrons of one element are entirely given up to another, creating ions that are attracted to one another. In covalent bonding, the electrons are not given up, they are actually shared, as we see here. And they're shared between, within water molecules here, the oxygen and the hydrogen atoms. Now, because the oxygen is electronegative, it has a large positive nucleus, it attracts the electrons more strongly than does the hydrogen atom. And so we end up with a net negative charge here, a partial negative charge around that oxygen atom over time. Because the electrons are spending less time around the hydrogens, you end up with a partial positive charge on those ends. This creates polarity within this molecule. This means a couple of things. One is that water is attracted to water because of it, right? If we have another water molecule over here, we can see that its partial positive charge at a hydrogen would be attracted to the partial negative charge on this oxygen, and so on and so forth, linking these water molecules. Now, the interactions are very, very short in duration, but it does mean that water is attracted to water because of this dipole attraction here. Now, what that means is that we're going to generate what's called surface tension or interface tension, and we'll talk about that down here in B. But something else important is that it means that polar substances are soluble within polar water solvent. Things like glucose or amino acids or proteins also contain polar covalent bonds, and they can compete with these interactions between water molecules and intersperse themselves within the matrix of water, become soluble. Non-polar molecules, such as fats, do not insert themselves within the water matrix and remain separate from it, right? Fats do not become soluble in water. So that's one important thing. Down here in B, we can also see that water molecules, because they're attracted to one another, can generate what's called surface tension. If we look at a water molecule down here in the middle of this droplet of water, the forces on it are neutralized, they're balanced. Though, in other words, this water molecule is being pulled in all directions by water molecules around it, right? No net force. If we look at the water at the surface of this water droplet, though, it's attracted to the water around it, underneath it, but at the air interface, there are no dipole attractions here, and so there are no forces pulling it in that direction. That means the net force pulls it inward. We could repeat these arrows, these sort of force arrows, inward. And this creates an inward force, a surface tension at that interface between air and water that tends to pull the droplet inward, right? Create a round structure. That's why raindrops fall as spheres. Now, this becomes really important in certain locations in the body, such as inside the lungs, where we have a thin lining of water, where that surface tension tends to make those little tiny alveoli, the air sacs, collapse. We have to have a counteracting measure that we'll talk about at another time. Also, between the lungs and the outside of the lungs, the inside of the rib cage, there is what's called an interface tension, where the tension of water against another surface is essential to the biological functioning of that tissue. So the structure of water, that polar structure of water, is really important for solubility factors as well as certain specific physiological examples in the respiratory system.